Yo guys, welcome back to another video. And normally I don't cover tier lists, but I feel like a lot of you guys do want insight on how the units are, how good the new units are, and how they pair up with the other units right now. So I'll leave the link of this in the description so you can get my end result and you'll know if you have anything you want to change, you can do that. So let me go through each tier. So you got supports, of course. We have speedrun including that because you're just a farm. But then we got people that are just irrelevant. There's like 2 units there, but you just ignore them, of course. Then we have good hills, good grounds, and good hybrids. These are the ones who are, as the name states, they're good, but they don't reach that meta tier. You know, they can be very good early game, and then later game, of course, you won't be using them because there's better units for that tier. Then we got meta, so you guys know that. So first off, let's start with supports. We've got I at the top of support tier because she can give a 18% damage buff and apply a cost reduction to all your units going through each upgrade, so it increases during her upgrades. She only has 3 upgrades and she costs about about 16k yen, I'm pretty sure. Then next we've got Koichi. He's an 80% slow and he's a hybrid unit, so on hybrid on his last upgrade, so that's very good, you know, you can't hate on that. Then next we have Rukia. You know, the reason Rukia is below Koichi, even though she's full AoE freeze, freeze duration is like half a second to 1 second, so not the greatest, but she's definitely still good, you know. Hybrid full AoE freeze, can't complain with that. Next unit we have is Shanks, and it's kind of a bummer that his stun is only at upgrade 9 to 10, meaning you need to upgrade him a lot and spend a lot of yen for him. And it's a 3-second stun that has a 15-second cooldown, but he is full AoE, so that's very good on that part. And the reason he is above Gojo is because Gojos are very expensive, and as in both of them, they're basically interchangeable, you know. They both can't attack hybrid units or technically stun them and time stop them. But Gojo has no passives, to be honest. He has no passives, just his time stop. Shanks is slightly better than him because he has his overall passive as well. So other than being a support, he can apply decent damage. But Gojo, he just can't do any damage, you know. He has a thin line, which is a line AoE, so it's just very bad. But he has great range, you know, can't hit on that. So that's why you can argue his time stop, just for pure support, being slightly better than Shanks. So you're interchangeable for these two. And the next one up is Blackbeard. You know, you can argue him being anywhere in this. It's hard to say for him because it's a small little buff. It's just 20% to magic allies. He's a full AoE, so you can just have a little part where he's just buffing the units. But it's like he applies an effect onto the units, enemies actually, and they take 20% more damage from magic allies, so not too bad. And I'm pretty sure Itadori, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, he should be doing the same for physical, but for some reason he just doesn't do it, so, you know, he's irrelevant. Same with Rose, these two are just irrelevant. I don't even know why they included in this tier list, but just irrelevant. And then the last but not least, of course, we have Speedwagon. He's the only farm right now, so very good on that part. Then let's go over to, let's start off with the meta tier. You know, we'll go from the top to the bottom. So first up, you know, this might surprise you, having him over Broly, but in my opinion, Sid is definitely better than Broly right now. You know, in terms of his SP, he's not crazy. He has good range, and his passive. Let me bring up the difference between these two. You can see my screen. Okay, cool. Sid's passive, as you can see, it's a 22.5% chance to do his unlimited power passive. And the issue is with this, yeah, you know, that's pretty good. Of course, it's RNG, of course, it's kind of annoying with that. But Broly's one, it's not that great, you know. You can see it's every 10 attacks, you know. Every 10 attacks. Yes, it increases in range, which is very good. But you could proc Sid's passive about 2 or 3 times before Broly props one of his passive. This 200% damage, so that's why I have him higher. And as you can see, Broly's SP8 at max, yeah, it's a lot higher than Sid's, so it takes about, you know, if you have this start, of course, it's about 2 minutes, but it'll be like roughly 90 to 120 seconds to proc that passive. And you can see Sid's max SPA. It's a whole 3-second SPs less, so that's why I have Sid slightly above him. So I'm sure you guys can agree with that point there. You know, Sid is better as the full AoE hybrid secret unit, so that's why I have him slightly above Broly. And right now, you know, true damage is of course good for the early stages, but late game it won't be that good as the game progresses, because I'm sure when Broly gets the magic buffers, you know, Wenda in AA and then flipping Erwin from AA as well. When those two types of units get added, he will definitely go above him because you have 100% magic buff onto him, and then at that point he just leagues above Sid. But right now he's slightly below. Then next up we have Ghetto. You know, he's a very good unit. He summons about, I think, 4 if you don't have Crusader on him, and what's crazy he summons Crusaders, he summons 2. For maps with multiple paths, he's kind of crazy because he can summon on all paths. You know, overall good damage and very good for boss killing purposes. So you can't complain, and he's hybrid, of course. Very good, you know. Ghetto, you can't say anything bad about him. That's the thing. Then next up we have Igris. Igris, you know, the reason I have him slightly below Ghetto because Ghetto overall has more usage. Because Igris, you need to pair him up with Sanju. Yes, Igris is a hybrid, you know. You just need to pair him up with Sanju. As you can see, let me show you guys quickly. His passives, they mainly work with Sanju. Look, when Sunwoo is on the field, it gains 15% more damage and then minus 5 SP to 15% basically for each summon. So you can of course get better stats here, but he resides on Sanju. So as long as you have Sanju, of course you can put him above Ghetto, but he's just heavily reliant on Sanju. And then when Sanju gets a kill within his range, you know, release a battle cry, yeah, blah 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 blah. He buffs allies as well. You know, it's not too bad. He can buff allies for 10% attack speed and 10% damage. Well, it's actually minus 10 SPA. The wording on a lot of these units kind of annoys me sometimes. But yeah, that's why I have Ingrid slightly lower than him. And next up for the meta ground here, I have Nagumo first. And the reason for this is he's got an buff recently. You know, before the buff I might have had argued him somewhere else, but you know, with the recent buff, let me put on screen. You can see that his overall disguise passive damage cap from 40% to 50%. It's a small little buff. Then now his disguise restriction has changed from 2 different units to 1. No, previously 2 and now it's to 1 different unit. And you can see this is a disclaimer. He can only, okay, so a lot of people think he can copy base stats with no additions, but he doesn't copy traits, passives, levels, or stat potential, but instead he uses his own. Meaning, if your Nagumo is level 50, he will copy level 50 stats. And if your Nagumo is Crusaders, he will copy Crusader stats. This little buff, you know, little changes and stuff, made him very good. So that's why he was needed. Yeah, now he's a lot better. So that's why I have him in the top end meta ground. And you know, if you pair him up with Law, it's kind of crazy because right now Law is bugged. I mean, his disguise with Law is bugged because if you guys don't know, Law has an ability where he increases his damage by 50%. I think what else he does? Let me see. I won't show up on the in-game. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Here. Here. What does I want to show? Yeah, look. 50% more damage, 25% cooldown, and 30% range for 30 seconds. So if you use the low ability first and then use the disguise, he can get that buff as well. So he goes kind of crazy. I think topping to around like 32k DPS, and he's attacking like around like 8 times within that time frame. No, it's about 5 attacks during that time frame. So, and with his overall crit damage and crit chance, you know, that's kind of broken, you know. Attacking 32k DPS with the crit he has, you know, you can't complain with that. That's why I have him at first, but of course he's bugged right now with Law. But the second best partner for him is someone I was testing recently is Toji, because the reason for this, Toji is very cheap, only 40k to max, meaning getting him to max is very easy. So you can pair them up well together, and Toji applies bleed on his attacks, so you know, Nagumo can copy those stuff. And yes, it says no passives, but if the attack does bleed, he applies bleed. If the attack does slow, he applies slow. If the attack does freeze, he applies slow. Freeze. And with Berry, because Berry applies toxic damage with opposing damage, he can also do poison. So you can pair him up with any of these DOT units, and that can make him a very good damaging unit. And you can also pair him up with Koichi and Rukia, so you can have him doing crazy freeze, crazy slow from just crazy ranges. You know, Rukia will purely be the best for him because clearly you can see, I mean, I can't show you now, but his range, if you saw my showcase yesterday within my video, you can see his range is kind of crazy. So yeah, you can just pair him up with Rukia, have a full AoE hybrid freeze. It's kind of stupid, but yeah, that's that as well. But that's why Nagumo is at the top of Metagram, because he will age out very well. You know, as the game progresses, he's going to be staying up there because of how his disguise works. The next for second best, give me a second. Second best unit for Metaground is Sanjiru, and he just overall does a lot of damage. And if you can get his optimal trait, Crusaders on him, he can do a lot of crazy work. Let me go through his passive real quick. You can see here. When he gets a takedown, there's a 15% chance to spawn a shadow. The shadow takes 25% of his own damage and does 100% more of his SPA, so, you know, attacking faster than him. And it disappears after 6 seconds. And those summons, when the shadows are up, he's getting damage buff and SPA decrease. You know, he can summon Elite Shadow, which is 100% of his current stats, so, you know, it goes kind of crazy. That's why if you have Crusaders on him, it goes even crazier because it copies those damage stats. Not much more to say about Sanjivu. It's sad that he isn't hybrid, but that's why Igris is there to cover up for him. And he's pretty good. Oh, wrong thing. My bad. Keep forgetting that I'm using Chrome instead. Okay, that's it. Sanjivu is next. Who's next? Give me a second. I had noted it down. I'm trying to find my notes. Okay, yeah, I found it. Next, I have Law up. Law is just a secret unit. He has a line AoE attack for his last upgrade. And you saw his passive before. 50% more damage, 25% attack cooldown. He can get a good amount of DPS, like I think 13k DPS, 14k DPS, you know, with a crazy range as well, so he's not too bad. So Law is the third best meta ground unit. And then the fourth, you know, it might be quite controversial, but being above Sakamoto. But I have Toji in front of Sakamoto. The reason for this, Toji is very cheap. He does more damage when attacking the same enemy, and he can bleed. So his DPS, you know, he has a crazy DPS for how cheap he is. And if you pair him up with the inverted Spear of Heaven, he can be even crazier because he attacks like he has multi, so can pretty much proc the passive from the relic a lot of times. That's why I have him slightly above Sakamoto. And yes, getting onto Sakamoto, he is kind of crazy, but it takes a long time to build him up. That's the issue I have with Sakamoto. You can give him overdrive where he has like 20% less SPA. I mean 20% SPA buff, of course, where it's like 0.8. I mean, I can't explain it, you know what I mean? Well, he's 20% faster, of course. But it still take 50 attacks, and in a 15 wave game mode, it's gonna take a while, you know. So that's why Toji is better. And for how cheap Toji is, you can't really go wrong with him. You know, he's a lot better than Sakamoto in that front. Then next for the meta heal, this is quite controversial as well. I don't have Goku here. I have just Choi and Hisuke. The reason for this is, let me just get into Choi. Choi's damages goes crazy. Let me find it. Wiki. And units, where is it? Choi. You can see just 30% of his burn damage over 3 seconds. He does more damage through burning enemies, and this bar is why he's crazy. When he attacks a frozen enemy, he hits and do 150% bonus damage, you know. This is what makes or breaks his character. And that's why he's very good, you know. That's why you can, I'll say, it's interchangeable between Hisuke and Thingy. Yes, Choi is 4 placements and he does that crazy damage. You're kind of required to bring Rukia with him if you're using them too. So you need to bring Rukia just to use him, get the full potential of him. That's why you can argue Hisuke is better, because Hisuke is a solo unit and he's a 3 placement, and you can basically use him by himself. And he has infinite range, and that alone buffs his value a lot. Infinite range is crazy, and with a 4-hit relic, you can be critting on the 4th attack, the 5th attack, and then the 8th and the 10th. You know, it keeps going, the 12th and the 15th. And basically, he's a crit demon as well. So that's why he's very good. That's why I have Hisuke. You can basically interchange them. And I'll get on to why Goku isn't in Meta Heal later on. And next we go on to good hybrid units, you know. They won't replace these ones up there, but they are very good, you know. We have Rimuru, who's another hybrid unit. Very good hybrid unit, you know. It's just sad he won't really get into that tier because these units are far superior and you'll always use them over him. So that's why. Okay, unless it's just the buff, elemental buff, daily challenge you're using him, of course. I guess that's why you use him. But those units are definitely above him. And he is a very good unit, you know. He's hybrid. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I can say about him. You know, his passive. Let me go for his passive real quick for you. Slime Lord, Demon Lord. There. Every minute and a half. That's the issue with him, you know. 90 seconds for him to do this damage. That's why he's not really in that meta hybrid unit, meta hybrid slot, because Sid and Broly basically do the same thing. You know, less damage of course, but it's a lot quicker, you know. I mean, you can say Broly's one is basically similar to Rimuru's, but Broly's full AoE hybrid, he's way better. That's why Rimuru's that good hybrid. Then the next other hybrid is NL. Let's go into his passive for you so you guys can see. NL over here, NL's drums. He builds charges with every attack, and then he can gain 50% more damage, 10% attack speed, 15% range over in its overcharge state. Because when he gets 10 charges, he reaches overcharge state for 40 seconds. That's pretty good as well. And he also deals more damage to enemies under control effects, because he's stun, slow, and freeze, meaning you need to bring him with a slow, stun, or freeze unit. So he's kind of bound by that, so that's why you can put him above Rim if you want. You know, have him here. He's a very good hybrid unit, but he does not get into the meta hybrid tier. And that's the good hybrid tier for me. Then next off we have the good ground tier. This part is a lot of units chucked into this, so let's get onto them. First we have Boo. A lot of you guys would want to argue Boo for meta hybrid, meta ground, but you know, all these units are definitely ones that you use ahead of him. And you know, when I mean he's a very good ground, he's legit borderline. You can slide him in there if you want, but he's like the top good ground unit. So if you're looking for a unit on Evo to carry you for story, go for Boo, because on Evo you can get him full AoE, which is pretty good, you know. Can't really complain with that. And upon Evo, one of his passives, let me show you it. Where is it? Boo Ultimate. This passive is very, very good, you know. He has a absorption meter underneath his upgrade UI. And once he gets 50 kills, he can spawn a clone in that replicates his attack. So it's kind of crazy. So if you leave him on full AoE, you can basically have like a follow-up of his full AoE attack after the 50 absorptions. That's why I said it's very easily arguable to put him up there if you want, but I have him here because don't want this tier to be too cluttered. We can't really label everyone as meta hybrid. I mean meta ground, of course. So I'm trying to even it out. That's why he's there. Then we have Xiaoten. She's a new unit, 4 placements, and she can go kind of crazy with her damage stats. She has about 7.5k DPS with her max drink stacks. Let me show you. Xiaoten's passive. Have them equipped. Yeah, have equipped. As you can see, 3 to 10 drink stacks and then grant stingy. But during dizzy state, she gains 100% damage, 25% attack speed, and that is enough to put her up to 7.5k DPS, which is kind of crazy, you know, 7.5k DPS. For 4 placement unit, that's very good. It's like similar to Sakamoto's DPS. But it's because of how her thing works, it takes a long time. And her SPA during the dizzy mode is not that good, you know, it's about, I think, pretty sure, yeah, SPA is only like 6 point something or 7 point something. It's not that crazy. I think her SPA, let me show you. If the wiki would show it, I'm pretty sure it should. Wiki, Xiaoten, where's Xiaoten? Yeah, look, maxed out, she's only at 11 SPA, you know, that's very bad, you know. Takes a while for attack, and she's a ground unit, so... yeah, she's not really hitting the meta ground, or she's not really above Boo, so that's where she is. Then we have Ant King, Berry basically. He's got a buff recently, not a buff, he's got his passive in the game right now. He previously did not have these, but right now he does have them, and as you can see, where is he? Ant King. If neither Sanju or Igris is in his range, he gains attack and low SP, of course. And Berry gains 20% crit chance permanently, so he's very good on that part. And he has a RNG passive where he gains 30% chance to gain 10% crit chance as a bonus. This bonus receives after 8 seconds. He inflicts poison, you know, a new DOT. 15% of his own damage over 5 seconds. He's pretty good, you know, but he does not fit into that meta ground tier. Because meaning with him you can't really bring Igris or Sanjuru at all. So it just guts his value a lot. So next on to the next unit, we've got Ichigo. I'm pretty sure recently he did get buffed, and you can see his new passives. I don't have a screenshot of his old passive. If I find the old passives, I'll put it on the screen. Where's Ichigo? Ichigo Dusk. I'm blind right now. Okay, Ichigo Dusk. And as you can see, he applies soul bands to the units. When it reaches max stacks, he detonates it for 175% of his damage. But it deals true damage, which is why he's, you know, that's why I'd say his values increased after his buff. I'm pretty sure this is his buff state. After his Ichigo buff, they were saying he was going to get buffed recently. And then he has this as well. When he releases Soul Bind, he activates Hollow Fury for 8 seconds. Meaning he gets 20% more damage, 20% more attack speed, and 10% crit chance, you know. Goes kind of crazy, you know. And you can increase the duration, but that's the downside of it. If he does not get kills during it, it's only 8 seconds and it just runs out. You have to wait for all this to come back again. So that's why Ichigo's not really, you know, not that high up. You can argue him being a barbarian, you know, these two are interchangeable. Or you can even put them up. These three are basically interchangeable, but at the top of meta ground, I mean, pardon me. Excuse me, sorry. Good ground, we got Boo, he's just pretty much the better one. Then next up, we have the heal second. You got these two. These two are interchangeable. They're not that great. They're all right. You know, you can just do what you want with those two. Ignore them. And then we have good heals. Uryu's above Golden Frieza, and we've got Goku at a good heal. The reasoning for this is you're gonna be using these two always above Goku. You know, if you have these two evolved, you're gonna definitely use them ahead of Goku. And yes, Goku has decent passive, but his overall DPS is nothing crazy. Let me show you. Let me show you his passives. He deals more damage against flying enemies. Every 5 attacks Gojo does a Gojo? I say Goku. Charges the power strike does 15% more damage. Every 10 enemies defeated, he gains damage and crit chance up to 25% max and 50% crit. Already, Hisuke already has better crit than him already, because he has guaranteed crits. In terms of damage against flying, that's pretty good, but overall, you know, you're not always just hitting flying, you're always hitting, you can hit ground units as well as a heal unit. That's why I definitely have Choi and Hisuke above him. Yes, he has 5 placements, so you can argue him being slightly good with that, because look, 5 placements max, you can place a lot of them, get a lot of good damage in, but I mean, you can argue it there, but you don't really need to have 3 meta heal units, you know, it doesn't make sense. That's why these two, you're always using him above Goku. That's why I have Goku in good heal. He's at the very top of good heal. It's like Boo, where it's like you can argue it there. He's like it's borderline, you know, borderline. That's what I have him there. And that's my tier list, you know. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comment section. And if you have any things that you would like to change or you think should be changed, let me know and I'll reply to your comment. And I'll make an updated one soon if, you know, you guys want anything to be changed or have any, like, criticism about it. But yeah, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, and yes, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.